各位歡迎收睇26分鐘見證實錄。今個月係加拿大原住民歷史月，係提高大眾認識、學習同欣賞原住民歷史及文化嘅好機會。旅遊係推廣文化、提供大眾同原住民聯繫嘅契機。透過飲食、生態旅遊等嘅方式，遊客同散民可以同原住民對話，以第一人身近距離了解原住民嘅故事。喺今集嘅節目，我哋帶大家了解3位原住民旅遊業者嘅背景同初心。旅遊除咗可以有觀光放鬆嘅目的，亦都可以係有承載、傳遞文化同支持原住民經濟圈嘅深層意義。
Art and food are definitely two big things with Indigenous culture, and many people won't have an opportunity to explore some of the remote areas or try some of the foods. So I think it's a great entryway for sure.
Indigenous tourism is a way to create economic sustainability and prosperity in community, on the community's own terms.
對於一啲原住民旅遊業者嚟講，旅遊亦都係一個同外界對話、建立聯繫、分享自己故事嘅機會。
Because Indigenous people come from an oral history, many of our stories are not in the books, so it really is special, and it requires an Indigenous person to share that point of view and that perspective about how British Columbia became a province.
My hope for Indigenous tourism in BC is for people to come from all over the world and hear the stories, the important stories of Indigenous peoples and their communities, and be part of the land and be part of the culture.
So my name is Inez Cook. I'm part of the New Hulk Nation in Bella Coola, British Columbia.
Inez Cook 係喺 New Hulk 部落出世嘅原住民，佢喺出世1年之後，因為當年政府嘅原住民兒童領養政策，被送到一個白人寄養家庭生活。
I am part of the 60s group. I was adopted out when I was young, and I didn't grow up with my culture. And my whole life I knew that I was Indigenous, but I didn't know what that meant, and I didn't know if I wanted to be Indigenous. I thought it was kind of a choice since I was adopted into a non-Indigenous family. But my whole life I was yearning and searching for culture. My adoptive family, they didn't know what the government was doing. They just knew that in their eyes that this little girl needed a family with love, and they adopted me. And I was lucky, one of the luckier ones, because I had a great family and I was raised with love. So that's amazing. Unfortunately, a lot of the stories aren't as positive. However, I was taken away from my family, taken away from my community, taken away from my culture. And my biological mother was basically deemed worthless all the other little girls. She wasn't allowed to speak her language.
呢一段歷史之所以被稱為 60s Group 60年代挖空，係因為當時政府喺未經小朋友父母同保留區同意嘅情況之下，直接將小朋友帶走並送俾白人家庭領養，就好似劃走父母身邊嘅小朋友咁。
When that was a time when the government went into the Indigenous communities and they took away the children and they adopted them out to non-Indigenous families. And it was a part of assimilation. And so what had happened previous to that is they'd gone into the communities, taken the kids away and put them into the residential schools. And right now the news in Kamloops with those 215 children, one thing that's really heartbreaking, well, more than one thing that's very heartbreaking, is that non-Indigenous people are shocked about this news, and Indigenous people are not shocked.
成長過程中 ，Inez 對於自己原住民嘅背景感到好奇又困惑。有一次，佢去到 Kelowna 旅遊，期間發現一間原住民餐廳，令佢好有興趣。
When I was going through my divorce, I went to Kelowna during the wine festival, and I saw a big sign, and it said, "Don't panic, we have bannock." And I told my friend, I said, "Oh my God, stop the car. There's a native restaurant here." And she's like, "What do you mean? What does that mean?" And I'm like, "There's a native restaurant in Kelowna." I said, Oh my God, can you believe it? The Olympics are coming, 2010. The whole world is coming to Vancouver, and there isn't a place that they can have local Indigenous cuisine. That's insane.
當時佢意識到東澳將會帶嚟大量遊客，而餐廳係一個方法，俾其他人亦都係令自己更加了解原住民文化。
We needed an Indigenous restaurant in Vancouver. There had been some years ago, but there hadn't been at the time. There was nothing. So my friend was like, oh my God, I'll work day and night. Let's just make it happen. And so I wanted it to be authentic. And what happened was a lady we knew, her daughter had a restaurant that she was subletting. And it kind of worked out all in the right time. So we just kind of moved in, and like literally like a month later we were open. Food brings everyone together. And food is a really great approach to having a little flavor of somebody's culture. In the summer months, normally pre-COVID, we are highly rated on the review sites. So a lot of tourists will book us when they book their hotels. And as a local, we don't remember to book a restaurant like that much in advance. So a lot of times we miss out on getting a space. But I mean, there's anybody that likes good food is my customer. And
Ines 嘅原住民餐廳目前已經營運近11年，餐廳嘅全部員工都係原住民。咁多年過去，呢一度仍然係溫哥華唯一一間原住民餐廳。
I wanted Bannock in the word so Indigenous people knew it was their restaurant. That's our traditional bread. And then salmon, we're West Coast, we're salmon people. And I thought, okay, if somebody doesn't know the name of the restaurant, it was salmon and something. So if you look up salmon and something, will come up. And otherwise, you're like, it was something in Bannock, then we'll come up. So that was the reason I came up with that. So it'd be pretty obvious. When you enter the walls, you'll see like the room, you'll see the walls are adorned with beautiful art. You know, it's all Indigenous values of the modern viewpoint. You see our team, we're all Indigenous. You see the food, it's all Indigenous with a modern palette. You see all of it, and it's approachable, it's in the city, it's a nice little introduction, and it can bring inspiration to try other Indigenous things.
This is Devin, and he's making bannock, and it's just simple ingredients. It's flour, baking powder, salt, and water, and then oil on the bottom of it. That's the beginning product. We baked it for 20 minutes, and this is the end product. You want to take a look at it? It's probably ready now.
今年59歲嘅 Ida Baker 係 Squamish 原住民，亦都係餐廳嘅廚師。佢話自小就中意煮嘢食，由8歲開始學習烹飪。
Everything is not store-bought. We do in-house smoking. We don't buy smoked fish. We do it ourselves. So this is a white buffalo sage smoke. So it's got a sage brine up there, and you can smell it. It smells really good. So we just brine it and smoke it for about 20 minutes. When I was younger, I ate nothing but fish, deer meat, moose meat, rabbit, ducks, goose. I never ate chicken or beef. It was always deer meat and all the wild game. Watch. That's how I learned. Not got told how to do it. Gotta watch. If you don't learn from watching, you don't belong in the kitchen. That's what they told me when I was little. So I was eager to learn. Braising is a good braising. If you learn how to braise some game meat, it takes the gaminess out of it. You gotta learn the spices and garlic and onion. It's simple. Just mirepoix, and then learn to put red wine with it, or if you don't have red wine, use beer. Yeah, a bottle of beer would be great.
This was gifted to me from the chief of my nation when I received my name. Through my restaurant, I was able to reconnect to my biological family and start learning about my culture and my heritage. And I went back to my community 11-11-11 for a 3-day potlatch, where I got reintroduced to my community, and I received my traditional name, which is Sneetsmana. You cannot even imagine how I felt when I got a letter from the government saying that my biological mother passed away from a blood disorder.
咁雖然餐廳令 Inez 有機會同出世嘅原住民社區聯繫，但係成長過程中一直都冇機會同社區接觸，每一次嘅探訪都令佢覺得好有壓力。
And when I went to the potlatch, I met 500 relatives. And that was super overwhelming. All of them were meeting me, and they remember my name, but I don't remember who they are or how I'm related to them, and I can't really figure it out. And then I feel like even worse. I feel like, how come I don't know my family?
佢將自己嘅故事製成一本圖書，希望下一代了解以往政府針對原住民嘅不當政策。
Children they're sponges. They absorb things. They understand things. I mean, even now, the younger generation is so much more about celebrating diversity with people, with gender, with culture, with everything. And it really is starting with the young and teaching the other people, you know. And I think reconciliation is probably one of my favorite terms. And everybody's responsible for themselves, and it's a personal journey. It's not so much for the Indigenous people to reconcile, it's for the non-Indigenous people to reconcile with the Indigenous people and to find ways and to be a good ally, be an amazing ally and support BIPOC businesses, you know, and support other people and learn about it and learn about the history and celebrate the land that you live on and be respectful.
原住民文化同知識好多時都係以口頭傳遞俾下一代，因此要深入認識佢哋，最好嘅方法係深入原住民社區或者直接對話。咁除咗飲食，大眾仲可以點樣同原住民有更多嘅接觸呢？下一節翻嚟再睇。旅遊可以以唔同嘅形式呈現，有原住民就喺溫哥華舉辦生態旅遊團，希望令人多認識呢片土地嘅歷史，咁同埋分享原住民一代又一代傳遞嘅智慧。另外，有美地原住民成立加拿大首間女性原住民創立嘅航空公司。
My name is Tira Fraser, and I am proud to be a Métis Esqueo, or a Métis woman.
旅遊業其中重要一環，莫過於係負責承載遊客到旅途目的地嘅航空業。Tira Fraser 20年前一次坐小型飛機嘅經驗，令佢有興趣成為飛機師。
So I was 30 years old when I was in a small airplane for the very first time. And I was on an aerial tour over the Okavango Delta in Botswana. And the pilot was banking the aircraft and telling us stories of the land, sharing with us about the trees and about the waters and about the animals.
作為女性原住民機師，佢話可以加入行業，希望增加非白人女性嘅代表性。
Sometimes it's challenging to feel like, you know, whether you're in a boardroom or in an organization, that you look at things differently, you see things differently, and you place importance on different things, and you know, feeling that sense of the belonging that's hard when you feels different than other people, and where in Indigenous spaces and with Indigenous peoples, I have such a feeling of belonging.
成為機師之後，佢成立自己嘅航空公司，並喺2019年10月正式營運。
Esqueo is a Cree word for woman, and I chose the name mindfully as an act of reclamation of womanhood, reclamation of matriarchal leadership, and reclamation of language. And in a very male-dominated field, that's a pretty bold name to call your airline Woman Air. But people have been embracing it. And again, it's an act of reclamation, reclaiming. So the logo, you can see in the middle is a Métis symbol. And it's also the woman. You can see the head of the woman, and then you can see the arm of the woman. And then on the bottom, the green is to represent the land, and the blue is to represent the sky. It's a beautiful day. One of the things that we're really proud of is acknowledging the land that we're traveling through and to, and also sharing with our guests, our clients, ways to acknowledge the indigenous territories that we are traveling from, through, and to. The initial vision of the whole airline was to uplift Indigenous tourism, to connect people here from YVR, Musqueam Territory, with the communities within our province. And, you know, the difference that we can make is how people see the land, that witnessing of the land from the air like a bird. When people are connected with the land, they want to take care of it. When they're connected with Indigenous peoples and learning and growing from that language and that culture. Flying is freedom. Flying is a door to new adventures and possibilities.
透過成立航空公司 ，Tira 除咗希望令客人同土地有更深嘅聯繫，同支援原住民社區，亦都希望更多原住民兒童同青少年有機會接觸飛行。
An initiative called Give Them Wings, and we support this program that inspires Indigenous youth to take flight, and that inspiration of the wonder of flight is so important. And so mentoring our young folks is been a part of, you know, my 2-decade-long career.
6月作為加拿大原住民歷史月 ，Tira 覺得係個好嘅機會俾大家主動認識同接觸原住民歷史同文化。
We should be celebrating Indigenous peoples always, and having a specific day and a specific month helps us to raise awareness, helps for people to be able to connect with Indigenous worldview, wisdom, voice, stories, and see the incredible resilience of Indigenous peoples. You know, a history that Indigenous peoples have known since the time of colonization, but there's a level of consciousness raising across our country about Indigenous peoples, our history, what's happened in our country, and this is an opportunity for us to really learn the truth.
不過公司成立無耐之後就遇上新冠疫情爆發，佢期待未來可以接待更多本地同外國遊客。
With a small aircraft, we've been offering charters here from the Musqueam Territory throughout British Columbia, and we'll continue to offer those charters. So where it is that folks wish to travel to, and we're in community engagement conversations with some communities on Vancouver Island, and looking to see how we might serve their community through scheduled service. The light at the end of the tunnel is here. We are so excited to bring people locally, traveling locally, and help people to connect with each other and connect with the land, witness the land by you know, sharing with them the wonder of flight and taking them to some awesome places here in British Columbia.
So many people are looking for that authentic experience, to get out on the land, meet people, and connect with culture. So we've been very fortunate that it's one of the fastest growing sectors in the overall tourism industry. It's arts and culture. You can go to a great arts and culture experience up in Squamish and learn how to develop a cedar bark bracelet. You can do outdoor adventure, wildlife viewing. There's great accommodations. You can do a road trip out into the southeast BC and go out into the Kootenay Rockies area. So it's all different sectors. You can do wildlife viewing, and your guide will talk about how we're so connected to the land and to the bears and the stories.
卑斯旅遊局喺2016年曾經估計，原住民旅遊業為省內創造7400份全職工作，帶嚟7億500萬嘅經濟收益。 卑詩省原住民旅遊協會表示，省內原住民旅遊業過去不斷發展，協會亦都有為會員提供協助打造旅遊營商計劃嘅項目。咁不過疫情就為業界帶嚟打擊。
We have over 100 market-ready businesses, and over the last 10 years, we're growing at least 10% each year. So we've actually seen a fair amount of growth in the last 10 years. Now, the pandemic has had a big impact on all of the tourism industry, and with Indigenous tourism, because so many of our communities are very remote, you can only get there sometimes by boat or plane. So some of the communities have had to close during the pandemic, or else they're only operating in very limited capacity. Previous to the pandemic, our biggest market was some of the international visitors. So US is a big market, the United Kingdom is a huge market, same as Germany. And the Asian markets are also emerging markets where we're really working to build that awareness and the interest in having an Indigenous experience. But yeah, right now we're really focused on the domestic market.
而為咗幫助原住民旅遊業發展同喺逆境中生存，聯邦政府同卑詩省府先後向業界撥款。
The grants are used to really support the businesses to make sure that they're not going to close and they're going to become insolvent. So we just want to make sure that they'll keep their doors open in the next while. And it's a great way for us to build economy in our communities with jobs, and the experiences also provide a great capacity building.
雖然疫情為旅遊業帶嚟困難，但係亦都刺激業界以新形式同他人接觸。就好似卑詩省原住民旅遊協會，因為疫情限制，未能夠舉辦大型活動慶祝原住民歷史月，因此舉辦咗3個網上工作坊，向參加者介紹原住民飲食文化同其他旅遊活動。
Our information is passed through relationship, saying we are a peaceful people and we welcome you. So when you walk through this cedar sculpture, cedar is sacred. Our people are giving you a blessing.
呢一度係為人熟悉嘅溫哥華士丹利公園。喺行入圖騰柱之前，會經過呢一個雕塑。人類學家 Candice 解釋話，如果細心留意，上面嘅圖案蘊藏特別意思。
They're holding paddles, and the paddles are saying we are the people of the Salish Sea. We are water people. We travel by water. We live off the water with all of the seafood. And this here is the crescent moon, and it's an understanding that we are harvest people, that our people harvested in spring, summer, fall. Winter, we came together and we potlatched. So it's understanding and having that connection to the land, that understanding when food is ready, how to harvest it in a sustainable way.
行入公園可以見到各式各樣嘅圖騰柱。Candice 話：佢哋都係嚟自卑詩省北部嘅部落，各有意思。
Here was carved by Charlie James, also of the Kwakwaka'wakw people, and this pole was put in a book, so it's probably one of the most copied and the most appropriated sculpture. And when he was a master carver during his time, he was not allowed to carve his totems for his own cultural community needs. Back then it was illegal for our people to practice our culture, and you can go to jail. Our people went to jail when they potlatched. It was a event that was not understood. Totems tell the lineage, which is our genealogical history. They speak of important events within our society. They highlight our spiritual beliefs and our connection to the spirit world. They mark great leaders. I have a totem behind me from the Haida people, and it's a mortuary pole honoring that great leader. So not only do those totems represent many different groups of Indigenous people, their meanings and their purposes are also very different.
Candice 而家係一間原住民旅遊團嘅創辦人，希望分享自己嘅原住民文化同知識俾其他人。
My name is Candice Campo, and my ancestral name is Hatsametsa. It translates to always be there. Being raised within an Indigenous family, I grew up with all of the traditions of living off the land, gathering medicines, berry picking, harvesting, and I so got accustomed to being on the land that working with children and working with students was an aspiration. We have customers from throughout the world, the United Kingdom, Australia, China, Korea, Japan. It feels like every year we're meeting people from somewhere else in the world that we haven't met yet. So we have a very culturally diverse international clientele, and it's awesome. I love it. I just love meeting people and learning a little bit about their culture because we have more in common than we do have difference. It's just a matter of having that conversation and finding that connection.
除咗將圖騰主嘅故事同埋圖案中嘅意義分享俾遊客 ，Candice 都會講解溫哥華呢片土地嘅歷史，同埋原住民與大自然嘅關係。
This tree is our most sacred tree. All plant life is sacred, but the red cedar tree we call kapai is the tree of life for our people. And the reason why it is our tree of life is that when this tree came into origin over 5,000 years ago after the Ice Age, it really developed our material culture and even supported our spiritual life. We use this tree for housing. We even used it for clothing. How we used it for clothing is you would make an incision, and when the sap is running in the spring, you pull a strip, and you could pull it quite high, and you peel the outer bark from the inner bark. You wrap up that inner bark because it has really rich oils. You put it away. So when you are weaving your clothing, you're actually using the cedar bark that you harvested the year before because the oil, which is absolutely completely bug resistant and mold resistant. I think sustainability is the key word, and that's the sustainability of your resources, the land, as well as the people you work with. But I am very excited about the growth of Indigenous tourism. I really think we have a lot to offer to share the story of this land.
咁好啦，今集嘅節目時間又差唔多啦。如果觀眾對我哋嘅節目有任何意見嘅話，歡迎以電郵嘅方式同我哋聯絡。咁觀眾亦都可以上網睇返今集嘅節目內容。多謝收睇，下星期再見。